Good Monday afternoon. Thanks for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Lou Raguse. Lawyers for the U.S. government are set to respond today to Minnesota and the Twin Cities lawsuit aimed at quelling the surge of ICE operations here. Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison filed the lawsuit last week, calling Operation Metro Surge an invasion in the state. In a hearing last week, the judge said she wanted to wait for the federal response before deciding whether to issue a temporary restraining order, calling the case a frontier in constitutional law. Right now, we're waiting for the official cause of death for a man who died in ICE custody. 36-year-old Victor Diaz was arrested by ICE earlier this month and taken to El Paso. ICE says he was found unresponsive on Wednesday. ICE is reporting that he died by suicide, but the official cause of death is still under investigation. Senator Tina Smith reacted to the news on X, saying ICE has an obligation to keep detainees safe. She's calling for an investigation into what's happening in ICE detention centers. Developing this afternoon, NBC News says that federal officials are now investigating Becca Good. That's Renee Good's widow. Sources say it's to determine if she, quote, impeded a federal officer moments before an ICE agent shot and killed her wife. Good's lawyers say that there's been no contact from the FBI or federal officials indicating that Becca Good is the subject of an investigation. This comes after President Trump called the couple professional agitators. In our new digital political show called KARE 11 On the Record, Danny Spiewak spoke with new DFL State House Leader Zach Stevenson, who discussed a number of topics, including the ICE shooting of Renee Good. Here's part of that conversation.
You've sent a letter to the U.S. Attorney demanding the state join the investigation. Do you have any expectation that they'll consider that request?
I'm not holding my breath. I think it's very clear that the federal government has made up their mind about what happened to Renee Good. Made up their mind in a way that's not consistent with the video evidence, I would add. But they seem to be totally unwilling to have a real investigation. And I'm not the only one who thinks that. 6 prosecutors in the U.S. Attorney's Office, nonpartisan career professionals with illustrious careers, quit over exactly this issue, flagging in particular the fact that they weren't allowed to cooperate with the BCA, something that they have done on numerous huge cases. That's standard practice. It's what would enable Minnesotans to have faith in the outcome of the investigation, and the exclusion makes very clear that the cake is baked.
With this topic, the issue of fraud is intertwined with it, but removing the ICE situation from it, when it comes to fraud in the DFL, in retrospect, was there more pressure that the DFL legislature could have placed on the Walz administration to institute firings earlier or have more accountability in the early days of the scandal?
Well, first, I want to just challenge the premise here, and I'd say that the only connection between what ICE is doing in Minnesota and our ongoing work to protect public dollars and combat fraud, the only connection between those things is that Donald Trump wants to use fraud to justify the kind of violent reaction we're seeing from ICE on the streets of Minneapolis. There's nobody who can say with a straight face that what ICE is doing in Minneapolis is going to make has any less fraud in the state of Minnesota. And we should care about that because fraud's a very serious issue. Every single dollar of fraud is unacceptable because it's a dollar that, 1, belongs to the taxpayers, but 2, should be going to a person who's vulnerable and needs the help. I mean, these are programs that are designed to help kids with autism, homeless people, people with really significant disabilities. And instead of going to those people, it's being stolen by these scammy businesses that are signing up to provide services to people and then not providing the services. That's outrageous.
When you talk about the session, obviously you're stepping into the leadership role for a mentor of yours, the late Speaker Emerita Hortman. What has that process been like, establishing yourself as the leader of the DFL caucus?
Well, you're right. You know, I met Melissa Hortman when I was 17 years old. I'm 41 now. She was a friend and mentor to me for more than half my life. And so it has been, you know, a whole mix of different emotions and experiences as I've been going through these last few months. Because it's obviously a great honor to lead this caucus, and there's an opportunity to do real good for the people of Minnesota. But at the same time, there's nothing I wouldn't give to not be leader of this caucus and to still have Melissa as our leader.
Is it different for you to walk into the House chamber or be in the Capitol since June?
Yeah, I mean, it will never be the same. You know, we're sitting in the chamber right now. There's still a memorial on her desk, as there will be all throughout session of a real visible reminder. You go into a room and you kind of think about the last time you were in there with her, in the caucus room downstairs, her seat where she usually sits. It's a constant reminder of her absence. And that will be with me for the rest of my life, will be with my colleagues for the rest of theirs.
Right now, the Department of Justice says it's launching a criminal investigation after anti-ICE protesters interrupted a service at a St. Paul church. Civil rights attorney and activist Nekima Levy Armstrong claims a pastor at City's Church is an acting field director for ICE. Assistant U.S. Attorney Harmeet Dillon confirms she's in touch with the FBI, posting on X that a house of worship is not a public forum for protests. Attorney General Pam Bondi also responding today, saying the, quote, intimidation of Christians is being met with the full force of federal law. Over the weekend, protesters for and against ICE's immigration crackdown have clashed in downtown Minneapolis. Joe McCoy was there and shows us some of the tense moments between the two groups.
Protesters clashing in downtown Minneapolis as far-right influencer Jake Lang held a pro-ICE anti-immigrant protest outside Minneapolis City Hall. Lang and a small group of supporters were met with hundreds of anti-ICE protesters who were calling for ICE and Lang to leave Minneapolis.
We want to protect our neighbors, we want to protect our state, we want to protect everybody, and we feel like we're on the front line for the rest of the nation, showing them how it's done.
I'm 100% on board with ICE in every way. If I could join them, I would.
This pro-ICE protester says he was out there because he is outraged over the fraud in Minnesota.
I'm not surprised about it at all, but now that we're actually have some evidence to come forward with it, that's the main reason why I'm out here.
After an hour or so of those opposing protest, things escalated and Lang was chased out of downtown Minneapolis.
There was no way that the people of Minnesota were going to stand for that.
I'm against terrorizing our community. We love our Muslim neighbors. We love all of our neighbors. And we want to stand together and say enough of this.
Anti-ICE protesters then marched through downtown Minneapolis before police told them to disperse.
Our people represent every hue under the rainbow, and they come from all walks of life.
Postal workers in Minneapolis held a rally against ICE enforcement in the city yesterday. They gathered outside the Lake Street Post Office, calling for ICE to leave Minnesota. This is the second time the workers have rallied in the past month. In December, they protested amid claims that ICE agents were using the post office parking lots to stage their operations in South Minneapolis. The Pentagon is now ordering around 1,500 active duty soldiers to prepare for possible deployment in Minnesota, according to the Associated Press. They say soldiers are on, quote, prepare to deploy orders in case violence escalates. In the meantime, state officials have the National Guard on standby right now. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey was on Meet the Press this weekend, where he pushed back on the idea of sending federal troops into the city.
How will you respond if those troops are in fact deployed?
That would be a shocking step. To those that are paying attention, you got to understand how wild this is right now. In Minneapolis, crime is dramatically down. We don't need more federal agents to keep people safe. You know what's causing more chaos? Having these thousands of ICE agents and border control and apparently military even potentially on our streets.
New today, President Trump lashing out at Norway for not giving him the Nobel Peace Prize and saying because he was denied that he is no longer obligated to peace. That message was in response to a text from Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre. The message from Støre was in opposition to Trump's plan to impose tariffs on European countries that oppose his plan to annex Greenland. Trump insists that Denmark, which claims Greenland as part of its territory, cannot protect it from China or Russia. Trump also questioning Denmark's right to Greenland. In Spain, 39 people have died and dozens more are injured after two high-speed trains collided. Officials say the incident happened on a flat stretch of the newly renovated track, leaving many puzzled about the cause of the tragedy. NBC's Ralph Sanchez has more.
The death toll continues to rise following that high-speed train derailment in southern Spain. Now, Spanish authorities are saying there were some 300 people on a train heading from Malaga back to the Spanish capital, Madrid, at around 7:45 p.m. last night. That train appears to have jumped the rails and ended up on the same track as an oncoming southbound train. There was a collision there, some of the cars falling off an embankment some 13 feet, passengers describing it as feeling like an earthquake, scenes of absolute terror as those cars went off the rails. People talking about suitcases flying everywhere, seeing bodies strewn around the carriages, some people thrown well clear of the train tracks themselves. The Spanish Prime Minister calling this a night of deep pain for our country. It is the worst train crash in Spain in more than a decade. It happened outside the city of Cordoba, and rescue crews are continuing to work to remove bodies from the wreckage. They say at this point they believe that they have all of the survivors out. But a major investigation now underway to try to figure out what caused this, and it has both authorities and experts baffled. The Spanish transport minister saying it is extremely strange that the accident happened where it did, because that is a straight part of the track that was recently renovated. Also saying that the train itself is fairly new, just 4 years old. So a lot of questions right now from the families of those who lost their lives. Raph Sanchez, NBC News, London.
This afternoon, sad news in the fashion world. Italian fashion designer and the founder of Italian luxury empire Valentino Garavani has died at the age of 93. House Valentino was created in the 1960s and quickly reached the heights of luxury fashion. The designer was also known for introducing a new color, Valentino Red, that became his trademark shade. According to his foundation, Valentino passed away in his Roman residence surrounded by loved ones. In health headlines this afternoon, new research reveals taking Tylenol during pregnancy is not linked to a higher risk of autism. The findings debunking a claim President Trump made last year that they're linked. More than 40 published studies on prenatal acetaminophen were reviewed with data on more than 300,000 pregnancies. Acetaminophen is widely considered the only safe over-the-counter option for pregnant mothers to treat pain or fever. Stick with us. More news and weather is coming up after the break.